I was called a liar by someone who said they loved me. The pain of that accusation echoed within me, like a scream that no one else heard. For years I was there, always by her side, the dedicated friend, the sister in faith. I was the one who listened, the one who offered comfort in difficult times. But behind that smile, there was a void that no one noticed. The smell of fresh coffee after the services reminded me of a home that was never truly mine. I was present but invisible, like a shadow amidst bright lights. But nothing prepared me for what would happen at the Sunday meeting. I knew something would change, but I had no idea of the intensity of the pain that would come. It was on that day that I learned the weight of the word sister. When she stood up, eyes filled with disdain, my heart stopped. Her words cut like a knife. She's only here to cause trouble. She's a fake. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The room was full of familiar faces, but suddenly, they were strangers, as if I was in a place where I never belonged. But there was something they didn't know. At that moment, something inside me woke up. With every word she said, a spark ignited. I wasn't the liar she said I was. I had a truth that needed to be revealed. What they didn't understand was that I was the silent strength behind everything. While everyone believed I was a fraud, my faith, even shaken, was what held the community together. They never knew that my devotion was genuine, that my love for them was real. I learned that silence is a form of resistance. As her words reverberated, I realized that the true pain wasn't in the rejection but in the revelation that the love I thought we shared wasn't real. Now looking back, I see that God knows what's in each person's heart. This experience taught me that even amid pain, there is an opportunity for renewal. True love isn't based on appearances, and each of us carries a story that deserves to be heard. If you have ever experienced something like this, you will understand the weight of an unfounded accusation. It takes courage to get back up after a fall. It's worth reflecting on this. How many times have we let the fear of judgment silence our truth? Sometimes, the greatest pain isn't being called a liar, but realizing that the love we believed we had was never real. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to see more real stories like this? There's another one in the cards. I looked at the faces around me, each one reflecting a fragment of the story we built together. But, at the same time, I noticed the lack of understanding, the void that had settled between us. That accusation was not just about me. It was about everything that had been built and now threatened by a single voice. The sense of betrayal weighed on my chest, like an unbearable weight that kept me from breathing. I remember a specific moment when we were all gathered to celebrate a community achievement. The warmth of laughter, the smell of freshly baked cake, and the soft music in the background created an atmosphere of unity. I was there, serving as always, but I felt that behind my smile, there was a shadow growing. It was as if each laugh, each greeting, was distancing me a little more from reality. The love I thought I was sharing was turning into a mirage, an illusion that faded with each passing day. At that fateful gathering, the look of disapproval from everyone I loved and respected hit me like an arrow, and, for a moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted them to know the truth I held so deeply, but what could I say? How could I explain that what was between us was more than words and rituals? The connection I felt was real, even if it was invisible to everyone else. In the midst of this emotional storm, something started to transform within me, the pain of betrayal mixed with a new strength. A silent determination not to let myself be defined by a single statement. I was not the villain of that story, and even if my truth was not recognized, I knew I deserved to be heard. With each passing day, I realized that resistance was not just an act of rebellion but a cry for freedom. The freedom to be who I was, to embrace my own narrative without fear of retaliation. It was then that I decided I would no longer remain in the shadows. I began to open up, to share my perspective with those who were willing to listen. With each word, I felt a weight dissipate. I was welcomed by some souls who also carried their own wounds, their own stories of rejection and silence. We began to gather, to talk about the pains we carried. And there, in that small group, I found a home. A space where vulnerability was respected and truths were revealed without fear. Meanwhile, the church continued its routine, as if nothing had changed. The celebrations, the services, the meetings all went on. But there was a heavy silence in the conversations. I was an absent presence. Even when I was physically present, my sister's words still echoed, but now, instead of pain, they awakened resistance, I no longer needed their approval to validate my faith or my essence. I began to realize that rejection was not the end, but a door opening to something new. And it was in this space of transformation that I found other voices, women and men who also felt invisible, who were also seen as problematic by those who were supposed to love them unconditionally. Together, we decided that our stories needed to be told. Each one of us had a truth that could not be silenced. Through informal gatherings, we began to support and strengthen each other. One of my new friends, who had faced a similar situation, told me, "True strength comes from our understanding that we are more than the narrative others create about us." That phrase resonated deeply. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I was not just a liar, I was a woman with a story, a woman who had sacrificed and deserved to be seen. As our stories intertwined, we began planning a gathering, a safe space where we could share our experiences without fear of judgment. The idea was simple but powerful: to create an environment of warmth and love. Where vulnerability was celebrated, it would be an act of resistance against the hypocrisy that had silenced us for so long. On the night of the gathering, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The place was simply decorated, but there was a palpable energy in the air. Each face that entered carried a unique story. And as we came together, the atmosphere filled with understanding and empathy. It was as if, together, we were beginning to heal the wounds that once seemed insurmountable. Thus, with each story, with each shared tear, I realized that true love was not based on appearances or rituals. It was built in sincere interactions. In the connections formed through our fragilities, the pain that once isolated me was now transforming into a bond, into a mutual understanding that, despite our wounds, we were all parts of the same body. What once seemed like separation now became a powerful union. Each shared story was like a thread of light, illuminating the shadows we had carried for so long. One night, while we were gathered together, one of the women began to talk about her experience of rejection. Her eyes were filled with tears, but there was a strength in her voice that resonated with all of us. I always felt like I was fighting alone. At every service, every meeting, I saw people coming together and I felt incapable of belonging. Hearing this, I realized that I wasn't the only one carrying this weight. There was a silent understanding among us, a recognition that the pain was a shared experience. I remembered how many times I had also felt that I didn't belong. How many times I had hidden behind fake smiles while feeling broken inside. But there, in that small group, vulnerability became our strength. What was a weakness in a hostile environment now turned into an act of courage. We were freeing ourselves from the chains that held us down, and together, we began to dream of a new kind of community. That night became a milestone for us. We decided that we wouldn't just gather to talk about our pains, but that we would also take action. We created a plan to hold an open event where others who felt invisible could come and share their stories. It was a bold act, but we felt it was necessary. We needed to show that the church, that space that should be a refuge, could also be a place of welcoming for those who felt marginalized. As the date of the event approached, anxiety began to grow. Questions piled up in my mind. What if no one shows up? What if people mock us? But at the same time, a flame of hope grew inside me. I believed that what we were doing was important. Creating a space where the truth could be told, where wounds could be exposed to the light, was a significant step. On the night of the event, the place was decorated simply, but there was a palpable warmth in the air. People began to arrive, and the room quickly filled with voices and laughter. When I looked at the faces around me, I realized that each person there carried a story, a baggage that deserved to be heard. The feeling of unity was overwhelming. We were a mosaic of experiences, each piece unique, but together forming something beautiful. When it was my turn to speak, my heart raced. I had rehearsed so many times, but now, looking at those faces, the words seemed to escape me. But then, I remembered everything I had been through, the pain that had shaped me, and the struggle we had faced together. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I'm here to tell a story, but also to hear yours. The story of a woman who was called a liar, but who found the truth in her pain. The words flowed, and the room filled with respectful silence. Each sentence I uttered brought with it a sense of liberation. I was no longer alone. Every glance I met expressed understanding and empathy. Together, we were breaking the cycle of silence that had imprisoned us. At the end of the event, The energy in the air was electrifying. People approached, sharing how they felt welcomed for the first time. A woman hugged me, her tears streaming down. Anne whispered, "I never thought anyone could understand what I went through." With each acknowledgement, my heart filled with hope. The love that had become a mirage was resurfacing among us, in a new form. Gradually, we began to meet regularly, not just to talk about our wounds, but to celebrate our victories. We created a support group where everyone could be heard without fear of judgment. It was a space of healing where voices that were once muffled now echoed freely. With each meeting, pain transformed into strength, and invisibility converted into presence. Over time, I realized that the real transformation was not just within me, but in all of us. As we shared our stories, the community began to change. Those who were quick to judge were now willing to listen. Empathy began to flourish, and the hypocrisy that had permeated the environment started to dissipate. There were still challenges ahead. It wasn't easy to change mindsets that had been entrenched for so long, but looking back, I realized that each step taken was a step towards freedom, the freedom to be who we really are, without masks. And so, we moved forward, not as victims, but as survivors. Our pain became the fuel for our transformation. Our meetings became sanctuaries of understanding, where vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to courage. We began to explore not only the wounds we carried, but also the hopes we could still nurture. I remember one night in particular when we decided to share dreams. One of the men, who had become a dear friend, timidly raised his hand and said, "I dream of creating a space where everyone can feel welcome, regardless of their stories." That simple sentence lit a spark in all of us. What once seemed like a distant utopia now became a tangible possibility. Each of us began to sketch out what that space could be, imagining a place where authenticity was celebrated and wounds, instead of dividing us, united us. A space that wasn't limited to empty rituals, but one that was a true home for those who felt excluded. The idea of a community center, a shelter where the voices of the oppressed could resonate, began to take shape. But, like any dream, we also faced doubts. What if we don't get support? What if people don't care? We questioned, but amidst these uncertainties, we found strength in the stories we shared. Each of us had faced rejection, and each of us knew what it was like to fight for a space where we could just be. The first action we decided to take was to organize an open community event, where we could invite those who felt marginalized to join us. A space to share not only pain, but also joy. The idea was simple but powerful. Invite the community to listen and connect with stories that had previously been silenced. The preparation for this event was intense. Each of us got involved in different tasks, from publicity to organizing the space. The energy was contagious. With each meeting, each planning session, we felt that we were shaping something much bigger than ourselves. We were building a future where acceptance would be the norm, not the exception. When the day of the event finally arrived, the nervousness was palpable. People began to come in, and the room soon filled with new and familiar faces. The air was charged with expectation and a little bit of fear. What if no one shows up? I thought, but looking around, I realized that we were already many. Each one there brought with them a piece of what it means to be human. During the opening, one of our most eloquent friends took the stage. He started talking about the importance of creating a safe space for everyone. "Here, we don't need to hide," he said, his voice firm. "Here, we are free to be who we really are." With each word, I felt the barriers that separated us starting to dissolve. So, one by one, the stories began to be told. Each account was a journey through pain, struggle, and overcoming. A woman talked about how she was sidelined by her family when she decided to come out. Another man shared the story of how his faith was tested when he became a target of prejudice. Tears flowed, but there were also smiles, nervous laughter, and warm hugs. We were creating a space of acceptance and love. I also stood up to speak. As I looked at the audience, I realized I was no longer alone. "I am the woman who was called a liar," I began, "but I am also the woman who found strength in her pain. I am here to say that our stories matter, and that the truth, even when painful, is what unites us." The words flowed, and I felt every gaze fixed on me. The connection that once seemed like a distant dream now became a tangible reality. It was as if everyone there was holding a piece of my story and, at the same time, I was holding a piece of theirs. After the event, the feeling of unity was palpable. The conversations extended for hours, Many people came forward to share their experiences and to thank us for the opportunity to speak. That was a turning point. We began to realize that our pain, instead of dividing us, had the power to unite us into a stronger community. However, not everything was easy. The change we were bringing also met with resistance. Some people from the traditional church began to question our intentions. Why are you doing this? Faith should be kept on a higher level, some said. But instead of discouraging us, this only solidified our determination. We were not there to please everyone but to create a space where each person could be heard and loved. Over time, we began to see the fruits of our labor. The group grew and more people joined us. We created workshops where we shared not only our stories but also learned to take care of one another. We learned about empathy, active listening, and, above all, how to embrace each other's pain without judgment. Each workshop transformed into a sacred space, where voices that were once silenced now echoed with strength. I remember one afternoon when we decided to tackle the theme of self-acceptance. One of the participants, a man who had faced many prejudices because of his sexual orientation, stood up and shared his journey of self-love. It took me a long time to understand that I didn't need anyone else's approval to be who I am, he said, with tears in his eyes. That sentence resonated with me and everyone present. It was a powerful reminder that acceptance begins from within. With each meeting, the connection between us grew stronger. The stories intertwined like threads of a tapestry, each one contributing its color and texture. And even though there were moments of pain, there were also laughter and celebrations. After all, we were creating a new kind of community, where vulnerability was not a burden but a source of strength. But it wasn't all roses. The resistance from the traditional church began to intensify. Some members, uncomfortable with the change we were promoting, started to openly criticize us. You are distorting the faith, they would say. This is not what God wants. I would hear these words and feel as if they were cutting the roots of everything we had built. The pain of rejection resonated again. But now, instead of shaking me, it drove me to fight even harder for what we believed in. We decided that we would not remain silent. We organized a meeting with the church leaders, not to confront them, but to engage in dialogue. It was a risk, but we felt it was necessary. We are not here to challenge faith, but to expand it. We began to explain. We wanted them to see that we were seeking a space where everyone could experience God's love, regardless of their backgrounds. The meeting was tense. Suspicious glances surrounded us. But we kept our composure when one of the leaders began to speak. His voice trembled. I believe everyone deserves love, but you are confusing things, he said. At that moment, I realized that the resistance was not just a matter of faith, but of fear. Fear of the unknown, of the different. I was overtaken by an impulse and asked to speak. I understand that this may seem like a threat, but we are here to show that diversity is also an expression of God's love. Each of us carries a truth, and these truths do not need to be opposed. We can coexist. The words came out with a sincerity that I did not expect. The silence that followed was heavy, but there was something in the air, a small crack in the resistance. Some members began to look at each other as if, for the first time, they were questioning their own beliefs. However, the response was not immediate. The meeting ended without a consensus, but I knew I had planted a seed. In the days that followed, the tension in the community was palpable, but at the same time, I noticed that a movement was happening. Some people began to approach us, no longer with accusations, but with curiosity. What you are doing is brave, one woman told me. As we had coffee after a service, that phrase was like a breath of hope. With each new meeting we held, the number of participants grew. The community was beginning to open up, and voices that were once silenced began to echo. A new group formed within the church itself, where people could share their stories without fear. It was a space where wounds were acknowledged and treated, and where vulnerability became a link of connection. Once, we organized an event to celebrate this new phase. The theme was the power of stories. Each of us had the opportunity to share not just our pain but also our victories. When my turn came, I took a deep breath and looked at the audience. I am a woman who was called a liar, but I am also a woman who found her truth amidst the pain. I began. The room was full, and as I looked into those faces, I realized that I was no longer alone. The feeling of unity was palpable. At the end of my account, tears were falling, but there were also smiles. The energy in the air was electrifying. People began to stand up, one by one, to share their experiences. It was as if a wave of courage had been unleashed. The event ended with a collective hug, where each of us felt seen and embraced. At that moment, I realized that true transformation was within each of us. The pain that once separated us now became a bond that united us into a stronger and more resilient community. The love that emerged among us was no longer a mirage, it was a palpable reality, built from our shared truths. With each meeting, we felt that we were not only healing our wounds but also shaping a new future, where acceptance and empathy were the pillars of our faith. Over time, the conversations became deeper. We didn't just talk about our pain but also about our dreams and hopes. One of the women in the group, who had been through traumatic experiences, said, "One you sanho como futuro ondas pesos possum circumromente sao, sem medo de serem rejeitadas." That phrase echoed in me, as a reminder that the struggle we were waging was for something greater than ourselves. It was for a space where everyone could feel safe and loved. At each meeting, we decided that we would not just talk, but also act. We started to develop a project that united our stories with concrete actions. We created an awareness campaign to show the community that diversity is not a threat, but a richness. We wanted people to see that each of us brings something unique to the table, that our differences were what made the community stronger. We decided to organize a bigger event, inviting not only the members of our small network but the entire community. The idea was to create a space for dialogue, where we could share our stories and hear the stories of others. It was an invitation to vulnerability, an opportunity to break the silence that so often isolated us. The day of the event arrived, and anxiety was in the air. The room was decorated simply but with a warm welcome. When people started to arrive, the environment filled with lively conversations and nervous smiles. The energy was contagious, and the expectation hovered over us like a cloud of hope. Each face that entered was a new possibility of connection, a new story that could be shared. I remember looking around and seeing many who had once looked at me with disdain now approaching, curious, willing to listen and learn. It was a sign that change was happening. It was not just a personal transformation. It was a change in the very community. The resistance we once felt was beginning to dissolve, like fog when sunlight appears. When it was my turn to speak, my heart raced again, but this time it was different. Instead of fear, there was a wave of courage that enveloped me. I was there to share not only my pain but also my journey of healing and discovery. I am a woman who has been called a liar, but I am also a woman who found her truth amidst the pain. And I am here to say that all our truths deserve to be heard. I began, feeling that each word was an affirmation of what we had built together. As I spoke, I realized I was not alone. Every look, every gesture of support, was a reminder of what we had achieved. And at the end of my story, the tears that were once of pain were now of relief and gratitude. That room was not just a physical space. It was a sanctuary where each of us could be seen and heard. After my speech, others began to stand up, sharing their stories of pain and overcoming. Each story was a new piece of the puzzle that we were assembling together. One woman talked about how she had been rejected by her family, another about how faith had guided her in moments of despair. Every story resonated with us, and the connection between everyone grew stronger and stronger. When the event came to an end, we decided to close with a big collective hug. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. At that moment, we were no longer isolated individuals in our pain. We were a united community, a collective body that supported each other. The pain that once separated us now became the bond that united us, and the strength that emerged from that union was palpable. In the days that followed, the energy of that event continued to inspire us. Conversations on social media and in casual meetings became more open. People began to feel comfortable sharing their own stories, and the community started to transform into a space of welcome and empathy. However, it was not an easy path. Resistance was still present, and there were moments when the voices of criticism rose again. Some people from the traditional church continued to see our struggle as a threat. But instead of discouraging us, this only strengthened our determination. We knew we were doing something important, something that could change lives. We decided it was time to take our message beyond the walls of our community. We organized a series of talks in other churches and community spaces, where we could share our stories and the importance of inclusion. the response was surprising. Many people were willing to listen and engage in dialogue. With each talk, each shared story, we felt we were breaking down walls and building bridges. It was a transformative experience, not just for those who listened but also for us, who were sharing our truths. One of the talks took place in a small church in the city center. The atmosphere was welcoming, but there was a sense of tension. We knew we were challenging norms, but we were determined to show that faith and acceptance can coexist. When we entered, the looks were curious but also suspicious. The pastor, a man with gray hair and a serious expression, greeted us with a restrained smile. He was respected in that community, and his position would be a crucial factor for our acceptance. As we began to speak, the room was filled with people, each bringing their own stories and experiences. One by one, we shared how the pain of rejection had shaped our lives and how, through acceptance, we found strength and community. The initial tension began to dissipate when a woman, with tears in her eyes, raised her hand and asked to speak. Her account of the struggle to be accepted by her family and the church touched to everyone. Empathy began to blossom, and nervous smiles transformed into expressions of understanding. After the lecture, some people approached us, sharing their own experiences of pain and loneliness. A young woman, with a trembling voice, said, "I thought I was alone. No one had ever listened to me before." That sentence echoed within me as a reminder of the impact our stories can have. This was what we sought, to create a space where everyone felt seen and heard. Over time, more churches began to invite us. The stories we shared were creating a movement. People from different backgrounds and experiences were coming together around the idea that, regardless of differences, human connection is fundamental. Resistance still existed but began to transform into dialogues. Conversations that were previously avoided were now emerging, and the vulnerability that once was a burden became a unifying link. In one of these meetings, a man who had been a fervent critic stood up to speak. He began with hesitation, but as he spoke, his words became firmer. "I didn't understand. I didn't see the pain you carried, but now, hearing you, I see that faith must include all of us." That statement resonated deeply, and at that moment, I realized we were making a difference, that change was happening. Even if slowly, our group began to grow, and we decided to create an annual event to celebrate diversity and inclusion. We called it the Festival of Voices. The event would be an opportunity for people of all ages and backgrounds to share their stories, experiences, and talents. The idea was simple but powerful, to create a space where authenticity was celebrated. The festival would become a symbol of our struggle and a platform to give voice to all who had felt invisible. The preparation for the festival brought a new energy to our group. Each one of us got involved in different roles, from organizing the space to spreading the word on social media. The excitement was contagious. With each new day, more people came forward, offering help and support. The festival was not just an event, but a celebration of everything we had accomplished together. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere was electric. The venue was decorated with vibrant colors, and there were stands where people could share their stories and experiences. When the performances began, the energy in the room was palpable. Each story told was an affirmation that pain can be transformed into strength. By the end of the day, when people started to gather in a large circle, I realized that we were creating something special. It wasn't just an event, it was a movement. The festival attracted the attention of the local media, and soon, stories about our struggles and triumphs began to spread. This brought new challenges but also new opportunities. Some people who had doubts about our intentions started to come closer, willing to understand. Conversations that were once filled with distrust were now turning into meaningful dialogues. One day, after a lecture, a woman approached me. She was a leader in her community, and throughout our conversation, she revealed that she had also faced rejection in her own faith journey. "I didn't know a space like this existed," she said, her eyes shining. "I would like to bring this to my church." That conversation was a milestone. The idea that other communities could benefit from what we were building brought a new perspective and hope. As our movement grew, the challenges we still faced also became evident. Some people from the traditional church continued to see our actions as a threat. In a meeting, a leader stood up and said, "You are distorting the message of faith." His words cut through the air, and I realized that the resistance was still rooted, but something was different. The room was full of people who were now willing to listen and question. I felt it was time to speak again. I understand that change can be frightening, I began. But what we are seeking is God's love in its purest form. We are here to show that faith can include everyone, regardless of their stories. We are not here to challenge, but to enrich. The silence that followed was heavy, but there was a spark of hope. Some heads began to nod slowly, as if the words I had spoken had opened up a space for reflection. We were not just an isolated group of rebels, but a community seeking a deeper understanding of faith and love. The following week, we decided to organize a series of open dialogues. These would be moments when we could gather with those who opposed us and hear their concerns. It was an opportunity to build bridges, not walls. The planning was intense, and we all got involved, each bringing their perspectives and experiences to the table. At the first meeting, the room was filled with familiar and unfamiliar faces. The atmosphere was charged with expectation and a bit of tension. Suspicious glances were exchanged, but there was also a palpable willingness to understand. When we began to speak, I realized it was a crucial moment. "We are here to listen to you," I said, "and also to share why this is so important to us." The first to speak up was an older member of the community. He began to talk about his fears. "I grew up in a time when difference was seen as a threat. I believe we need to protect the values of our faith." His words were sincere, and I understood that, although his perspective was different, his concern was genuine. I responded empathetically. "I understand that change can be frightening, but we are here because we believe God calls us to love one another. Regardless of our differences, we are not trying to erase faith, but to expand it." The conversations continued, and to my surprise, many began to share their own experiences of pain and rejection. Vulnerability was creating a space for connection, and the barriers began to crumble. At one of the meetings, a young woman, visibly nervous, stood up and said, "I have always been afraid of being rejected because of my sexual orientation. I thought I could never be accepted, even by God." The silence that followed was profound. Her courage in opening up touched all of us. And I realized we were creating a space where truth could be shared without fear. These dialogues became a solid foundation for what we were trying to build. Each meeting was an opportunity to listen and learn. Through vulnerability, we began to realize that many of us carried similar wounds, and with each story shared, empathy grew. Over time, the meetings became more frequent, and the community began to transform. The conversations that were once avoided were now being brought to the forefront. The resistance that once seemed so solid began to dissolve. One day, one of the church leaders approached me after a meeting and said, "I don't agree with everything you do, but I see there is something genuine in what you are proposing. I'm willing to listen more." That was a milestone. We knew the struggle was not over, but we were making progress. The resistance was transforming into dialogue, and voices that were once silenced were now being heard. We decided it was time to take the message to the wider community. We began planning an event that would bring our stories together, not just for us, but for everyone who felt invisible. The Festival of Voices would become a symbol of our fight for inclusion and acceptance. The preparation for the festival was intense. Each of us got involved in different tasks, and the energy was contagious. The event would not only be a platform to share our stories, but also a celebration of diversity. We created a space where everyone could be heard, where authenticity would be celebrated. The day of the festival arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The venue was decorated with vibrant colors, and there were stands where people could share their stories and experiences. When the presentations began, the energy in the room was palpable. Each story told was an affirmation that pain can be transformed into strength. Listening to each account, I realized we were creating something extraordinary. It wasn't just an event. It was a movement. That day, the pain that had once separated us now became the bond that united us, and the strength that emerged from this union was palpable. After the festival, the feedback was overwhelming. People started connecting with each other, and the stories we shared. Conversations extended for days, and the energy of the festival reverberated through the community, bringing forth a deeper desire for change. Many approached us, eager to learn more and understand how they could get involved. The space that once seemed hostile was beginning to transform into a welcoming haven. I remember an encounter where a woman, with a timid look, stood up and said, "I never thought I could feel part of something like this. I always believed that my story didn't matter." That statement echoed in me. How many times had I also felt invisible, as if my pain had no value? But there, at that moment, there was a collective recognition that every story, every wound mattered. As time went on, we decided to create a more structured support group, a space where people could come not only to share their pain but also to support each other. The idea was simple: to create a safe environment where everyone could be authentic, without fear of judgment. With each meeting, the voices that were once silenced began to echo louder. It was like we were building a symphony where each note, each experience, contributed to a greater melody. The meetings became moments of transformation. One night, a man from the group, who always seemed so serious, shared how rejection had deeply affected him. He talked about the nights he felt alone, seeking a place where he could be accepted. At the end of his speech, he looked at us and said, "I don't want to live in the shadow anymore. I want to be seen." That statement resonated like a mantra, and we all felt the depth of his struggle. As the community united, we began to dream of a more inclusive future. One of the women suggested we launch an awareness campaign, not only within the church but also on social media. The goal was to show that diversity is a richness, not a threat. We wanted more people to know there was room for everyone, regardless of their story. That idea ignited a flame of hope in all of us. We spent weeks planning this campaign, discussing how we could present our stories in a way that would resonate with those still trapped by prejudices. We created videos, wrote texts, and organized events where we could share our experiences. With each step, we felt that we were creating a wave of change, a current of love and acceptance that would spread beyond the walls of our community. When we finally launched the campaign, the response was overwhelming. Support started pouring in from all sides. People who had never spoken out before began to share their own stories. Social media became a space for dialogue and connection, where everyone could express their truth. It was as if the pain that once separated us now united us in a greater purpose. One day, while responding to messages of support, I received a message from a woman who had watched one of our videos. She wrote, "I felt so alone for so long. Your story gave me the courage to share mine. Thank you for showing me that I am not alone." That message touched me deeply. It was a reminder that every word we share has the power to resonate in someone's life and make a difference. As the campaign spread, we began to realize that we were touching hearts and minds. Some people from the church, who were previously resistant, began to open up to dialogue. One of the leaders, who had always been critical of what we were doing, approached me after a service. He said, "I didn't understand, but now I see that what you are doing is important. I want to hear more." That conversation was a sign that we were breaking down barriers and that change was beginning to happen. Over time, the idea of a permanent space to welcome those who felt invisible began to gain strength. We dreamed of a community center, a place where all voices could be heard and respected. It would be a space to share experiences, offer support, and celebrate diversity. With each meeting, the enthusiasm grew and ideas flowed. What once seemed like a distant dream was now becoming a tangible possibility. I remember the night we decided to take the first step toward making this dream a reality. We gathered all our efforts and started looking for a location. The idea of having a physical space where we could meet and welcome others filled us with hope. We began raising funds, planning events to help finance the center. With every contribution, with every bit of support, the feeling of before you leave. Do two things now: subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive upcoming messages. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. To continue, watch the next video. It's already in the cards and also in the description.